And as soon as it does, I'll push the
Todo este parte de un plan. Esto es matarte con flow animal. Esto me para convertirte en fan. Muévete al ritmo del bam, bidi bam. Bam, bidi bam, bidi bidi bam, bam.
hello, hello, hello. This is Queen Mother Speaks, and this is the month where our co-host Nana will be hosting all of the shows. But wait a minute, I gotta tell you something great. The election is happening in Kenya right here, right now, today. So we've been very busy dealing with a lot of those things. Hopefully, we'll have a little information to bring to you about the elections here in Kenya. But Nana will be your host today. Let me say this to you. Inasmuch as we had planned to have a few guests and some other things happening, it didn't happen. And that's okay. Because what we do have is enough to do everything that we want to do today. We're live at 5 every Wednesday, every week. This is Queen Mother Speaks. I am your co host for today. And our host, Nana Efua Adezawa, will be here in just a moment. As you know, again, she'll be hosting all the shows in this month. And we've entered into a new month. We've entered into a new season. And the theme is if not you, who? If not now, when? The time is now. And we are going to take a day and talk about the importance of the time is now. This famous quote is meant to inspire you, actually, okay, to do something, to inspire you to some action. So we're going to be talking about that more and more as the time goes on. And yeah, I want you to start thinking about right now what steps can you take to make it happen. That's the message that Queen Mother wants to give to you today. Do something about it. Whatever it is in your life, you have the power to make the change and make the difference. Okay, please hit the share, comment, and like button. And we want to give a shout out to some of our viewing audience. Looks like I see Bimbola, Lady Mo, Ursula, Michelle, Ernestine, High Priestess Seishat, Carmen, all of these. And there's Tina tuning in today from Atlanta. Okay. And in the studio today, we will be featuring Nana herself as our guest, and she will bring to you what she has to bring to you from her infinite storehouse of wisdom and knowledge. Okay. From the West Coast, I want to say thank you to the people who got up real early just to watch the show. That would be Red, Arisa, Kwashi, Los Angeles, Tashmia, Nyla, Hakika, and Samantha from San Francisco, California. I want to remind you to continue to wash your hands and keep yourself safe, not because the government says so, but because you choose to. Isn't that a great way to keep yourself safe? Okay. Queen Mother Speaks is a safe space for expression, and that's what we'll be doing today. I want to remind you to take a look at that Bonga Dada Bonga, Bonga Dada Bonga platform. It's a platform for women's voices every Thursday, 7 p.m. Kenya time. Click on facebook.com/Bonga Dada Bonga. So now, what is this thing we call Queen Mother Speaks? It's actually a platform, a community platform for us to share our views, to inform, to inspire, to ignite to greatness. We have wonderful conversations with our guests, and we do a meditation for you. And we also do a little breathing. So, right now, that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to go into our breathing exercise for today from the Art of Living Institute. We learned in year one about breathing, and we've been breathing it. Hello to all the new guests tuning into Queen Mother Speaks today. Thank you for being here. Again, we learn about the art of living, about breathing from the Art of Living Institute. So, what we're going to do right here, right now, today, is we're going to do two breathing exercises. And the way we do it, we're going to breathe in to the count of 8 through our nose, hold to the count of 8, and then release. Release it to the count of 12. Are you ready? Let's go.
Yes.
Yes. Let's try one more. Mm, Thank you for that. I don't know about you, but every time I take a moment and breathe, it just does something for me. I hope it does something for you. And as we continue into this season, we're going to have the Art of Living Institute to talk a little bit about the different types of breathing for different things. Okay? Right now, I'd like for us to go to our affirmation for today, and it's called I Allow God's Will to Guide Me. I allow God's will to guide me. I allow God's will to guide me. When we study the lives and accomplishments of great leaders, we find something that they have in common. The thread is that they did not have a physical blueprint showing them every step to take. Hmm. They often choose a road less traveled. They make their way forward by relying on their intuitive guidance system, which many people call God. Think of what you have read about Jesus. He meditated regularly. He went away alone to listen and reflect on the divine messages that was revealed to him through spirit. God's messages to Jesus are still prospering all of us today. By listening and following God's will, we receive divine ideas. I can attest to that. Working with God, we can accomplish far more than we can through our own human will. I will follow God's guidance. I will follow God's will. I know God's will leads to a loving divine plan that blesses me and blesses others. Mm. Thank you, will, in me, through me, as me, through the Christ within, and so it is. Thank you. Our devotional reading today is from Daily Thoughts from the Hill. That's Hillside International Truth Center in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. All right, thank you for that. So, right now we're going to go to our headline. But before we do that, let me just flash on Nana so you can see how beautiful she's looking. Nana?
Well, greetings, and I praise God that my co-host for this month, Dashanaba Daktari, is safe. She went to one of her friends' houses during the 2022 Kenya election, and I just want to say I'm so happy that she's safe. The violence did start the night before Monday night, and she was able to get to a friend's house in a safe area. So we are thankful for all of you that prayed for peaceful elections in Kenya, those that watch Bunga Data Bunga. And today we have a really exciting show. We get to hear the Talila Report. And you all know I just absolutely love it. Can't hate to have any type of technical difficulty during it, because everything that she's telling and sharing with us is so important. Don't forget, this is the midterm elections, and we want you to vote, vote, vote. Make sure you're registered.
Vote.
On the list. Make sure you know where to go. There's so many different organizations that are available to help you get to the polls. Make sure you take plenty of water, comfortable shoes, take your mask, but be prepared to camp out and do whatever it takes to your vote is so, so important this time. So I look forward to bringing you some really exciting information. Many of you know that my family genealogy is online back to 1250 AD in Europe and 945 BC in Africa. So many people want to know how I got there. So we're going to do some features on the California Slave Insurance Registry. So many of you may be able to find family information there. We're going to do the slave voyages, transatlantic voyages database, and I'll be putting those links up for you. And then also the Freedmen's Bureau. And then for our people with disability, the Library of Congress has a whole lot of different records and resources so that you can find out and learn about your culture also. So I'm very excited to be able to bring you the links. I did the presentation on the California Slave Insurance Database for the United Nations Slavery Remembrance. So I've been asked that I repeat it. And in keeping with our Underground Railroad theme, it is a place you can do a lot of research. So, Dr. back to you.
Okay, thank you for that, Nana. And all I really want to say is this. If you live abroad and
Yes.
you want to get registered to vote, to get your
Yes.
ballot in, all you have to do is something that says votefromabroad.org. Votefromabroad.org. You got it? Very good. Next, we're bringing up the one and only Talila Report.
Thank you very much, Queen Mom. And hello to our host for today, Nana. I'm American lawyer Elizabeth Myers, aka my Moroccan name Talila, coming to you live from Marrakesh, Morocco, with another Talila report on Queen Mother Speaks. And in the North African language of Tamazight, Talila means freedom. And that's what we cover, anything that impacts democracy and the rule of law, and your freedom to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, today, oh my goodness, I hope you can't hear this noise. There's some construction in the building. We'll do our best. Today, I want to talk about the winning streak that the Democrats appear to be on, passing landmark legislation, including the most recent bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. Well, the US Senate voted on Sunday to approve this landmark bill addressing taxes, climate change, and healthcare that really puts President Biden on a major role of pushing forward legislation ahead of the midterm elections. With this particular bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, 51 Democrats voted in favor, with 50 Republicans voting against, to move forward this legislation that would be the largest investment in combating climate change ever to be made in the United States. And the tie-breaking vote was Vice President Kamala Harris. Well, let me just give you a brief rundown of this legislation because it's very, very broad-ranging. It's not just climate change, but on climate change, the bill covers everything from electric vehicle tax credits and clean energy manufacturing to investments in environmental justice communities. Greenhouse gas emissions, one of the biggest problems that we're facing in global warming, are projected to be slashed by about 40% as of 2030, according to the Office of Congress Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. While this bill addresses climate change in a big way, it also does a whole lot more with respect to healthcare and taxes. So on healthcare, this bill will lower prescription drug prices and extend the existing enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies that are scheduled to expire at the end of 2022. It will extend them for 3 more years. You may recall that in March of 2021, those subsidies were previously extended through the end of this year as part of the Democrats' Corona Relief Virus Package, Coronavirus Relief Package, which you all may remember as the American Rescue Plan. So that was one of the first big successes of the Biden administration. Now, although the subsidies have made the average American's healthcare coverage more affordable, leading to actually record enrollment in 2022 in healthcare insurance, Republicans have been staunchly opposed to what they pejoratively have labeled Obamacare. But if these credits, if these provisions were allowed to expire, nearly all of the 13 million subsidized enrollees would see their premiums rise for 2023, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, and more than 3 million people could become uninsured, according to a study by the Urban Institute. But one of the most significant provisions of this bill would empower the office that runs the federal Medicare program to negotiate with the drug companies the prices they charge our seniors for costly medications. And this covers insulin, for example, which more than 7 million Americans require insulin daily. And 14% of those users are spending more than 40% on their income after food and housing costs just on the insulin itself. But 43 GOP senators sided with Big Pharma and voted against capping the costs of this life-saving insulin. The bill also imposes penalties on the drug companies if they increase their prices faster than the inflation rate. So let me turn to another area, taxes. Taxes have been one of the biggest issues for both Republicans and Democrats. But this legislation makes a number of changes that would help families, especially it makes families making less than $400,000 per year are not affected by any of the tax increases that are imposed by this bill. And that is in accordance with the pledge by President Joe Biden when he ran. There are no new taxes on small businesses. Instead, this bill imposes a 15% minimum tax rate on the income of large corporations that book profits, not just revenue, but profits of over $1 billion. So here are the facts on the taxes. Not one middle-class person filing their taxes will find that they are facing higher taxes or higher tax rates because of this corporate minimum tax. The only people who have proposed raising taxes on Americans who earn under $400,000 are the Senate Republicans with an agenda put forward by Senator Rick Scott. The analysis that backs up this bill shows that the corporate minimum tax will only raise taxes on 150 corporations that earn more than $1 billion in profits who already pay less than 15% in taxes. And Steve Rosenthal from the Tax Policy Center sums it up. The tax provisions of this bill, if you're not a tax cheat, a hedge fund manager, or a corporation making over $1 billion, you are not affected. What is really telling, though, is what is not in this bill. What is not in this bill are provisions long sought by the Democrats to strengthen the nation's social safety net. And these include universal pre-kindergarten and lower childcare costs, paid family and sick leave, an enhanced child tax credit for low-income families, affordable housing benefits, grants and loan forgiveness to lower the cost of college, home health care benefits, and get this, 12 months of healthcare coverage for mothers after giving birth. Those things that the Democrats have long sought to put in legislation to protect the American public, the general average person are not included in this bill. The final version of this bill is far smaller than the slimmed down version the House passed in October, and a mere shadow of the sweeping $3.5 trillion reconciliation package that the Democrats initially floated last year. Yet Democrats and the White House estimate that this bill will still have a massive impact on many Americans. And overall, the bill is projected to reduce our deficit by more than $300 billion over a decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office. So this bill is just another, the Inflation Reduction Act, just another success in the legislative winning streak for President Biden. It follows in the wake of the American Recovery Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the CHIP and Science Act, which President Biden signed into law just yesterday, which will lower the cost of everyday goods and strengthen American manufacturing and innovation, create good-paying jobs, and bolster U.S. economic and national security. But let me just tell you about one more in the streak. Today, President Biden signs into law, and this is a long mouthful of a name, the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Honoring Our Promises to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act, which is the PACT Act of 2022. This bill that he is about to sign provides essential benefits to our veterans, to their families, to their caregivers, and survivors of those veterans. It expands access to the Veterans Administration healthcare for soldiers who got sick or died from exposure to toxic burn pits while deployed in the service of our country. And not a single Republican voted for this bill. President Biden has said that passage of the Inflation Reduction Act and these others have required many compromises. Doing important things almost always does, he said. But if you look at the common theme across all of this legislation, it's that Republicans have tried to block all of these efforts. And Republicans are also continuing the post-Roe reversal of the reproductive rights of women and continuing to claim that the 2020 election was stolen, despite having no evidence in more than 60 court cases that the election was stolen. The fact is, the Democratic Party is the only party that is doing anything right now to create jobs, to promote civil liberties, to enhance the economic security of the American people, and we must make sure that Democrats stay in majority in the midterms. I want to echo what Queen Mom and Nana are saying. We have to mobilize, we have to galvanize and energize our strength together to take back our democracy from minority rule. And so again, I'm going to cite to you the votefromabroad.org website. For all of you outside of the US, go there, request your ballot. We're only about 90 days ahead of the midterms now, and you need to request your ballot in order to get it in time to get it back to your voting state. I want to also just touch on one more aspect of justice and democracy. The beginning of this week served up 3 important setbacks that indicate that finally Donald Trump is on the road to being held accountable for his crimes and his lies. The first one is the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, a court that I practiced before for many years, ruled that the House Ways and Means Committee can access Trump's tax returns. Now, undoubtedly, that ruling is going to be appealed by Trump, but it seems to me a no-brainer. The U.S. Supreme Court has already denied an appeal of a similar issue, and I expect that they will do so here, even though the Trumplican justices are in the majority. The second setback for the former president is that his real estate appraiser has been held in contempt of court and is being forced to hand over 36,000 documents to the New York Attorney General. Let's see him try to wiggle out of that one. The third one, and perhaps the most important here, is that for the first time in US history, the FBI executed a search warrant of a former president of the United States on Monday. They searched Trump's place of business, Mar-a-Lago, early on Monday morning. And I say place of business advisedly. He's not permitted to live there under the ordinances under which Mar-a-Lago operates in that county in Florida. But nevertheless, that aside for the moment, this search is incredibly significant. That action had to be approved at the highest level of the Department of Justice by Merrick Garland himself. To get that search warrant, a federal judge had to conclude, based on probable cause, to believe that a crime was committed and that evidence of the crime is located in the place to be searched. It also indicates that the DOJ does not trust Trump one whit to respond to a subpoena to get the information sought. And for good reason. Trump's destruction of records is very well known. He pioneered flushing docs down the White House toilets. He also tore up documents that had to be taped back together by his staff. The execution of a lawful search warrant is an indication that no one is above the law. And this is a fundamental principle embraced in our American system of government. It is now clear that Trump is finally being investigated by the nonpartisan Department of Justice, quote, without fear or favor, as Merrick Garland puts it, and justice is coming. Now, you're going to hear a lot of Republicans who have immediately cried foul about the search of the former president, who is, as we all know now, a private citizen. And they are calling for the defunding of the FBI. But they are showing their crass hypocrisy on this issue. They called for Hillary Clinton to be locked up even before she was being investigated. If the Republicans actually stood on that principle or any other principle, they would now be shouting, "Lock him up." The telling difference is that she, unlike Trump, cooperated with the investigation. So let's not be complacent. As Liz Cheney says, Donald Trump has no business being anywhere near the Oval Office ever again. The only way we can ensure that doesn't happen is that for those of us who believe our democracy is worth preserving, to turn out in great numbers in the upcoming midterm elections and in 2024. So I want to say again, volunteer, appear. If not you, who? If not now, when? Be there for American democracy and freedom. And that is the name of this report. And now I'll turn it back to our host for today's show, Nana. Over to you, Nana. You're on mute, Nana.
As you can see, it's a lot going on, not just in the United States, but around the world. So I want to reiterate what Elizabeth said. If you are an American overseas, anywhere, the Democrats abroad are coordinating for you to be able to mail in your ballot in time to participate in the midterm elections. It's so important. So you can go to their website, you can type in Democrats abroad, and it'll bring you whatever is in your area, whatever is with your country code. And we want you to make sure you request the ballot in time. What they did last election, which really, really made a difference in the state of Georgia, as you all know, is that they coordinated the mailing. So multiple people who were within the state of Georgia or within a particular city could send their information in, and it's cheaper because mailing from overseas is expensive. And we realize that you may not have the money right now. So by coordinating through Democrats Abroad, you all can send in multiple ballots at the same time to the same states or to the same counties or same areas. So don't let lack of funds keep you from participating. People are willing and ready and standing by to help you and assist you. Okay.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, Nana, with Democrats Abroad, I'm working with Democrats Abroad as the chair of the Africa Committee.
Okay.
We have, as an organization, we have plenty of assistance. If you find you have questions, even about where to vote or how to register, how to request your ballot, we have voter assistance people on call. If you find your ballot gets rejected, we have voter protection people who can help you sort that out and who can make sure you know that you have a backup ballot, a provisional ballot that you can cast to preserve your vote should that not be resolved by the time of the election. So we need you at the Democrats Abroad Africa Committee. We need you in Democrats Abroad as a volunteer. If you can't volunteer, we've got help for you to vote. If you have questions, you can always email me at Elizabeth_Myers@democratsabroad.org.
All right.
Thank you for that. As you know, this election, particularly in Georgia, is hotly contested. Stacey is running for governor. And last time she did not get elected by a very narrow margin. And they had taken over 200,000 names off the voter registration list. So when many people got to the polls, their names had been taken off. If you've recently moved, if you've been recently married, for whatever reason, please check now. As she said, we're not that far out. Time this year is flying by. Everybody has to agree with that. Wherever you are in the world, seems like it's been the fastest year of our lives. So here at Mother Speak Show, we want you thriving. We want you having knowledge about the candidates. Don't go in there uninformed. You really need to know who to vote for. You need to follow along and be an educated voter now more than ever before. The second thing that I want to share with you is, as you know, COVID has affected the world for the last 2 years. So yesterday was my birthday. I'm just so blessed to have seen another day. But it is very important to me that you call up a young person and ask them to read something to you. If you're standing or sitting beside a young person as you travel, ask them to read something to you, because they are normally 2 to 4 grade levels behind all over the world, but particularly here in the United States, because they have not been in school and they weren't doing homeschooling. They didn't have any educational stimulus. Many people are homeschooling, but think about the whole community. If you do not help people learn to read and to progress with their education, then when you want to go to a fast food restaurant, don't be upset if they can't give you the correct change. It takes a village. And right now we need to get everyone caught up. So moving right along, it is important to all of our hosts and co-hosts on Queen Mother Speaks that our show has equal access to services. So one of the most important things, and a resource that internationally you may not know about, is the Library of Congress, and it's loc.gov. But they have programs and services for the blind and print disabled. So I want to start out putting up some of those links and the information. So here at the bottom of the screen is our Library of Congress programs at the National Library Service for the blind and print disabled. And the program is called That All May Read. We're working on getting interpreters to sign Queen Mother Speaks so that it's more widely accessible to everyone around the world. And you can imagine, if you have a child who's hearing impaired or sight impaired, you want them to have a full and quality life. And we here at Queen Mother Speaks, we want you to have that too. It's very important to me that you're participating in documenting your culture, your experience, your family's experience. And I think that's an area that's very underserved in terms of cultural and historic preservation. So I want you to plan to participate by going to the link here on the bottom, the https www.loc.gov programs/national-library service-4-the blind-and print disabled. So no matter what type of disability that you may have or being differently abled, there's a resource there for you so that you can access history and access the whole world. So if you need assistance, then please put a comment here in the Queen Mother Speaks. You can go to our facebook.com. And as you saw the banner, we're also on YouTube. So we're streaming directly to YouTube where you can leave us comments. We want to know who you want to see on the show, what topics you want to discuss, where in the world that you're watching us from. But we want your input. Like she said, this is a safe place for dialogue. She and I have been friends over 30 years. So we have come a long ways because of each other and because of our friendship. So as I alluded to earlier, in 2020, I was one of the speakers for the Slavery Remembrance with United Nations, the California Mayor's, Los Angeles Mayor's Office, and the Los Angeles County Cultural Affairs Department. So right now I'm going to go ahead and put up the link, and this is the link to the Slave Era Insurance Registry. And it is called, I just call it the California Slave Database. And it is important. It's a very important resource because we're able to tell you a whole lot about what happened between census. Let's see, I got to get the right one up. Let's see, I got to hide that one. And then I'm sitting here trying to operate and and talk at the same time. So as you know, it's a little new for me. Okay, there we go. Got it. So this is the California Slave Insurance Database. And what that is, in August of 2000, the California legislature found that the insurance policies from slavery era had been discovered in the archives of several insurance companies. Now, when they say several, they mean many. And that it documented insurance coverage by the slaveholders for damage to or the death of their slaves. So issued by a predecessor insurance firm in some cases. You know how companies buy one another, they do mergers and acquisitions. And many of the current insurance companies were around in the 1800s, 19th century. And these documents provide the first evidence of ill-gotten profits from slavery. So which profits in part capitalized insurance whose successors remain in existence today. So, you know, I wasn't thinking when I changed my insurance, but Aetna Insurance in the book, Keeper of the Fire, which is the book that documents my African ancestry back to 948 BC. People want to know, how did I do it? How did we find so much information? It has over 4,000 photos in that book. It has 33 countries of archives, libraries, and museums that have holdings on where people who were from the Congo all the way over to Ghana, which was the kingdom of Benin that my family's from, they were taken to 82 countries around the world. So then how do you find them? And this slave era insurance registry is one that does it. So the commissioner requested and obtained information from the insurers who were licensed to do business in the state of California, and he gave them a certain time period with which to do the reporting. They had to show what records they have. They had to obtain the names, give up the names of slaveholders or slaves described in those insurance records. They had to make sure the information became available to the public and the California legislature. So this was a landmark decision that really, really did a lot to let people know, because where they don't have the names, if you have the plantation holder that or slave master of your ancestors and you think that they were on a particular plantation, you may not have their name in the census record. They listed male or female, they listed the age, they listed if they had any disability, and their race. M was for mulatto, and so on and so on. But the slave insurance register has the name, the age, description, any identifying birthmarks, speech impediments, any describing characteristics of the named person. So each insurer licensed and doing business in the state had to research and report to the commissioner with respect to any records within the insurer's possession or knowledge relating to insurance policies issued to slaveholders that provided coverage for damage to or the death of their slaves. So many people have accused me of sugarcoating slavery. In my archives at www.plantationquilts.com, I've had 2 different museums in 2 states. So I have over 10,000 records. And then I have resources like this one that give me access to thousands more records that I don't personally own, but we can now access to give you, or people who are doing genealogy, people who, businesses can also access this. And that's also a very important note, because if you want to find out, did your family own slaves or were your family enslaved, then this can give you the answers. If you want to find out if a company that you worked for sold slaves, used slave labor to build colleges, universities, churches, and corporations that are still in existence, then this database will let you know. And many people think that businesses don't need to know that. But around the world, people are paying reparations. Now, here in America, reparations are hotly debated of who should be paid reparations for the people who were enslaved. So I was in a discussion. They brought me in as a panelist. And one of my friends, Dr. Njoku, who is from Nigeria, and he's a retired professor from Western Kentucky University, he said, for the first time I've ever heard this, that he felt the African villages where the enslaved people came from should be paid the reparations. It is their growth that has been stifled because they took the artists, they took the educators, they took the warriors, they took the craftspeople, they took the cooks, the historians, they took the providers of culture, history, and society, leaving the infirmed, the elderly, and infants. We even have evidence, and I have photographs in my books of 2-year-olds working in the plantations fields, picking cotton here in America. But that child wouldn't have been able to survive a transatlantic voyage. But those being born here, they did work at very young ages. The book that I recently wrote with my co-author, KJ Williams, is called Keepers of the Secret Code. That book talks about my mother's great-grandfather, who's the child of Peter and Eliza Farrow. They're my ancestors that actually worked on the Underground Railroad using what's now coined as the Quilt Code. So in later episodes, tune in because we're going to be showing you the photographs of quilt patterns, a textile language from Western Africa that's been cut into the bodies of the people that brought it. It's not pie in the sky. It's not vaguely so few quilt patterns. This is a language that was in existence in East Africa. The people migrated to West Africa with the same language, the same patterns with the same meanings, and they're in existence in both places today. A gentleman who's a researcher who's doing a restoration in Egypt, Tony Browder. I was so excited when I saw his video and his daughter was holding the light on the ceiling and they only had maybe 4 feet of room from the piled up debris, rock, sand, sediment, and the ceiling. When they shone the light on the ceiling, there was a quilt pattern that was there. Then I saw pictures and photographs of mummified cats that have the same quilt patterns on, and his restoration dates today. I can't go by particularly the dates. They're saying it's 25,000 years old. Biblical historians say that we've been around for 6,000 years, but we have structures that have been here a long time, and that we can say for sure. In a discussion I was having yesterday, recently, authorities around the world are saying, throw out what you've known. Because in United Nations, they asked all the countries to come, bring your history, bring your culture, bring all proof of inventions and just everything, agriculture, genetics. They brought animal husbandry, geology, rocks, minerals, astronomy, diet, nutrition, everything that they had. But 2 men showed up truly ready to say, these are African inventions. Here's the proof. These are genetic codes that we can trace and source around the world. These are religious practices that we can see around the world. They're megaliths, huge structures that are all over the world. The flood story all over the world, names being changed, biblical references, the same biblical stories, let me say that, but the names have been changed in all the cultures, but the same designs, patterns, information, verbatim exist. So it's a really fascinating study, which is why I want you to consider documenting your family's culture, their history, where they lived, what skills they had, and pass them down. Every generation of my family has done what we call AfriCare. And our guest today was supposed to be my grandson, JAMEL. When he was 8 years old, his class did a genealogy project. My daughter has lived in Bexley, Ohio since JAMEL was born. And all of the children and teachers in this school of about 300 to 400 people were Jewish, except for 8 people, the principal, a couple of teachers, and a couple of students. So they called me up and asked me, they call me Nana, And they said, Nana, JAMEL has to document his family history. Can you assist us? And of course, they were really surprised at what we had. He only knew my mother and father, his grandparents. So then they wanted to know, how did we document it? So JAMEL is now 17, and I wanted you to hear what he discovered, the preservation of our family, the aftercare done in our family generation after generation. I'm going to let JAMEL tell you about it, but when he was in first grade with artwork, pre-K, kindergarten, they recognized his gift of art, auctioned off his pictures, and built a wing of the school. In first grade, JAMEL decided to save gorillas in Uganda. So he clicked on the website and pledged a donation for my mother and I to pay. Elizabeth and Dr. It was hilarious because he calls me up. He said, Nana, we're going to save some gorillas in Uganda. And I said, really? I said, does it cost me anything? He said, yes, $150. So I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. I said, well, we'll do it. So then I said, I want you to figure out this effort. So what he did, I said, collect pennies. So he goes to school with his pennies and sets a big water bottles by every door. And believe it or not, within 2 months, he had raised $2,000 to sponsor these gorillas in Uganda. Yes. So it doesn't take a lot to do this. What it takes is a family effort. It takes us thinking about it, putting our heads together, and then we can come up with all the different ideas so that he could contribute and do aftercare from our family. Now, choose any country you want, choose any project you want, but participate and teach every generation to do this. You have to teach them your culture, what church you went to, what school you went to, what's different about your family. That may tell you where your family's origin and roots are. Now, Elizabeth, Dash did her DNA, and we were surprised that she and one of our other friends, Sass, were both. Well, Dash, you tell us where you were from. What did you find?
Okay, well, what we found in doing our DNA, and we did it through a company called Ancestry.com, Ancestry.com. And Sass and I found out that we were from the same place in the Cameroons.
Yes.
And that indeed we were what's called Bamaliki people. And the Bamaliki people are the quote unquote business people of that region. Okay. And she and I was actually planning a visit to Cameroons together. This is years ago before the king passed on. We didn't go, but we will be going. In fact, I'm going to give you a piece of new information that I haven't shared with either one of you.
Okay.
There's an organization I'm working with by the name of Youth in Africa.
Right.
And we do have a group in Cameroons. And what they're planning to do is to bring me in and officially be accepted as a Cameroonian in that country through the Youth in Africa organization. So let's see how that goes.
And what's exciting about that is I could vouch for her gift, because as quiet as it's kept, Elizabeth, she was selected as President Clinton's Business Person of the Year out of every man, woman, and company in America. She's taught business classes in Namibia and in Nairobi, Kenya, which is what she's doing there. But her specialty is coming into a country that has newly gotten its independence and is no longer a colonized country. So when the colonizers leave, there's a big vacuum in business and business ethics. And so what seems to, my opinion, is that the people in that country take on unethical practices that they've seen or experienced, and they become the oppressors. So her task is to get them to come in and do business with other countries and with themselves in an ethical manner and using great business methods. Now, Queen Mother, they were asking me once how, and Elizabeth, I'll help you out there, but they asked me, how did we get so much information? Queen Mother taught at 5 different colleges and her students actually were gathering tourism information for businesses. So they were doing a practical project in entrepreneurship so that they had stuff they could put on their resumes and interact with business leaders and entrepreneurs in our city, but around the world. And my museum was one of those. And so I had information from a variety of sources that I normally, as an American business, wouldn't have been able to ask. Another thing that she and I have done is we nominate each other for different business awards. And writing is such a key skill, as you know, from being an attorney. You've had to write legal briefs, you've had to read a lot. And she and I wrote our proposal so well. I nominated her, she nominated me, and the Atlanta Business League could not be us for the CEO award. So we co-shared. We wanted to go to the event anyway, but we didn't want to pay the expensive price.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So
you know, that's an example. That's an example that women need to follow even more than we do, is that we need champions for us and our work. And that's something I've always done with my junior associates and my students, that when something comes up, I push them forward for it. I give my imprimatur, my recommendation. I think we need to do that more and more. The other thing I want to add is that actually in next month, I will be back in the US coordinating a program for 40 mayors from Senegal who are coming to the US to study best governance, best business practices and ethics and leadership. And so that's something that I'm working on with my other Pan-African Institute for Municipal Development project.
Wonderful project, wonderful project. And you say they're coming from Senegal?
Senegal, yes, around 40 of them.
Okay.
They'll be in the States for how long?
They will be there for 10 very busy days. I think we gave them 2 days off in that time frame.
Well, what we can do is try to pre-record some of them, and anything that I can do to help, or any connections that we could give them, you know, with business or governance even, because I do programs for the National Park Service, for even like the mayor's office in Maryland and different cities that I've been to around the country. But it's so important that we, and I was saying this I put it in the comments with when one of the youth in Africa was speaking, we must give our youth and young people and international visitors international speaking opportunities. We have to put them on our shoulders and propel them. And sometimes when people ask me, how did I become a queen? How do you become a queen mother? Well, it was for 40 years of service to a country and giving people opportunities or providing provisions and things, input, directions, just very simple things. Nothing huge, just a lot of little things. Whether from here, because Queen Mother had been to Africa a lot longer than I had. She was installed in the 90s. And even though I worked with her on projects, I didn't understand the importance of attending her installment. And that is one of the reasons we have the program Queen Mother Speaks. Somebody asked me what the mission of the program was, and they were shocked when I could simply give it to them. I said a group of people who were planning on coming to Africa wanted input, suggestions, advice, and tips on what to do. So we want to talk to people who are coming for education. Dash came as a college student, and that started her love affair with Africa. Then she's come back to do business, and she develops entrepreneurs there. I've done international business or import and export also, and the SBA has great programs on how to do that in seminars and workshops you can attend. Dash was also a SCORE counselor, and I've done grant writing programs where we talk about how they can do international business. So one being a student, one coming for opportunities with entrepreneurship with Africa, which again leads me back, this way, back to Queen Mother. She was on the airplane that went to open up South Africa for entrepreneurs from Atlanta and the United States.
Oh my
You want
goodness.
to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, wasn't planning to do that today, but now that she's brought it up, for whatever reason, I can't really say when the African bug bit me,
Mm-hmm.
but it sure did bite, and it
Yes.
took out a big chunk. And my very first trip to Africa, very first time, as you well know, was with the champ, Muhammad Ali, when he was
Mm-hmm.
fighting George Foreman in
Mm-hmm.
Kinshasa, Zaire at the time, which is
Right.
now DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. And it was a contest. I won the contest. Listen, we'll go into that whole story another time. But from
Well, you
there,
showed me that picture, Queen Mom, and it's pretty amazing.
I know, right? She's there with
Yes.
George Foreman. She's one of the queens. And
Yeah.
Elizabeth, she was a queen even when lighter complected women were considered beautiful or favored. They had all complexion of queens. But it's also
mm,
interesting that fate took her home to Congo,
mhm, mhm,
Wow.
to
mhm,
where
mhm.
she's from.
Mm.
Wow.
No,
Indeed. Indeed.
Congo, no, the
Uh,
Congo
It's
is
near Cameroon. I'm
DRC,
sorry.
which
I'm
is
sorry.
different from the Cameroons. It's a
Yes, it is.
totally
I'm sorry.
different country, but that was my first introduction into the African scene. And from
Yes.
what I saw, I would ask questions. You know, I would come back to the States. I was a student at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, which is one of the finest schools in the world. And one of the things I enjoyed about the university is many of the professors who were teaching the courses were also the people who wrote the books that
Right.
we were studying. So we had right on the campus experts from
Hmm.
around the globe in any subject that you might want. UCLA was like that. And so I became a very active person with the African Studies Department at the university. And from there, everything else became history.
Right. And from there, we talked about, and people might ask, what does this have to do with the Underground Railroad? Elizabeth, the Underground Railroad was an international effort by people around the world, but
Mhm.
also people who had escaped slavery. And we hear a lot of people today. I have all these conscious friends, Elizabeth, and they basically say we're enslaved here in America by our minds, not just physically,
Mm.
but
Mhm. Mhm.
economically, legislative, in terms of politics, like we've seen in the election, women or marginalized groups still are held at bay
Mhm.
financially, politically, religiously, all different types of things. There's oppression going
Yes.
on. And so that's why I like to teach history by using historic examples and then bringing it into today.
Mhm.
How does this
Mhm.
apply today? She had an opportunity to go back to Africa as a student. And now she's giving opportunities to students. Where you were in
Yes.
the legal field young and educated,
Mhm.
you're giving opportunities for people to
Mhm.
come from Africa to study politics, ethical governance to improve
Mhm.
the quality of life of people somewhere else. This basically is an unspoken underground railroad that is still going on, that you take someone and then free them. Go ahead, Dash.
I have an idea as we're having this conversation, and
Mhm.
Elizabeth has revealed to us about the group of 40 coming to the States. Nana, the
Mhm.
Andy Young Institute is right there in Atlanta.
They
What are
are.
we going to do about that? Let's find out what we can do with Elizabeth and the group of 40 through the Andy Young. What did they call it? Ooh, it's for political studies.
Yes.
Okay, the Andy Young Institute, the foundation, they have like 4 or 5, but um, I think we might have some connections for you there, Elizabeth,
She already knows she
with the
does.
group, with the
All
group.
right. Well, yeah, let's talk about this afterwards on some
Yeah,
ideas.
we'll
That'd
talk
be
about it
great.
afterwards, but give us what we need to begin to plant the seed for having them, if nothing else, even if they went by to visit the Institute and the people that are there, and some of the people in government,
Yeah.
like
He has
Yeah.
the
Raphael.
Well,
Oh, I'm
they
sorry,
will. They.
Senator Warnock.
he has the Institute for Political Studies. But
Yes.
Dash already knows that she probably can get you an audience with Ambassador Young. Um, he also gave my daughter a scholarship to a very expensive tennis camp and then gave us his hotel at the Grand Hyatt in New York when at 12 years old, she qualified for the US Open Juniors at 18 years old in tennis. And he gives me his hotel room, and they gave us $900. And I said, sir, you do understand, right? I have a family of 8 and I feed them on $100 a week. So we don't need $900 for 1 week in New York. He said, take it and feed anybody else you see that is there so that their trip will be easier and they can afford to stay and win. I said, now you do know they're not going to let her play. And he said to me, do you think we went and sat in at the lunch counters because we knew they were going to let us eat? He said, you have to show up. Otherwise, they can say, we would have let them eat. We would have let them do this or that had they been here, but nobody came, so we didn't have to feed them. And the young people that went there with us, that we were able to feed, believe it or not, have since won the Australian Open and are in the top 10 in the world. Sloane Stephens. She was 14 at the time, and she and Kier actually tripped over a wood plank in the hotel, and they ended up giving us 9 coupons, but breakfast was $59 per person.
Ooh.
Yes, ma'am. Each dinner was over $100, but we would take a cab and go exploring. But he was funding, even then, civil rights for tennis. And most places we would go, we were the only minority family there, and international players who were also kind of mistreated. So what Dash is suggesting is still the Underground Railroad, that we provide a way and comfort and connections for people traveling from Senegal through your connection. And that's what the Underground Railroad was. It was a system of people who were courageous enough to do something a little different, to go outside the norm and their comfort zone for somebody else.
And speaking of getting out of your comfort zone and doing a little bit more, over here in this place called Kenya, which indeed is the land of paradise on earth. If you don't know if you're going to make it to heaven, you need to come to Kenya, because Kenya is paradise on earth. And I have just been floored by the courageous women here in Kenya who've decided to step up to the plate and throw their hat in the ring to win an office or to win a seat. Over 5,000 at the very beginning. I think after the preliminaries, it may have gone down to 2,500 or 3,000. But now, as we're at the point of electing all of our candidates, officials to run the country over the next 5 years, we have yet to see how many women have actually made it through. But we do know that we have 5 women who will be governors.
Oh, that's only good.
One.
There were only 3 last time.
Yeah, there were only 3 last time, but then there's the women representatives, there's the women. We want to see who's going to make it to Senate. We want to see which ones are going to be from the Minister of Parliament. All right. And then we've got the governors. Let's see what deputy governors they're going to bring forward for themselves, be they male or female. And I've been told, I don't know if this is true, don't quote me on this one.
Okay.
But that the person who is in the lead right now for the presidential seat, they are saying that he has the power to appoint a woman if he so chooses.
Right.
Isn't that exciting? I don't know that man. I've met him at a few events. He's been on campus at USIU when I was there a few times, and I don't personally know him, but I think if I got in his ear, I certainly could convince him to take on one of these fine women leaders who are now ready. They're ready, so I want us to think about it. And Elizabeth, I want you to think about this with us. What do we do to continue to power these women after the election is over versus them just stepping out of politics, and then we got to find a whole new swell of women for the next time 5 years from now. And I'm interested to know what are some of the things that we can do to empower them to stay in here as they move towards the next election 5 years away. I know that's not an easy thing to do because many of them have used their own monies, sacrificed monies they needed for their families to be in the race, to be able to hold up the flag and say women can't do it. I don't know what it is why Kenya doesn't want the women to move forward, but I'm pretty certain we're going to break out of that. Yeah, we're going to break out of that. I know the Kenyans are very docile people for the most part. right? But I'm convinced they're going to break out of that somehow, some way, and I want to be a part of that revolution. Speaking of revolution, we have now reached the 6 o'clock turnstile for Queen Mother Speaks today, but let me hand it back over to our host and see what closing words people may have. Thank you.
Well, I want to start by encouraging them to tune in tomorrow to Bunga Data Bunga, which is on at 7 p.m. East Africa time, 12 noon in Atlanta, Georgia, or Eastern Standard Time. One of the things that we touched upon is that we have to make waves. So let me tell you some of the things that we did this time, which is important. Elizabeth, we started with teenagers doing the research for us for the elections to get them knowledge about the election process, who've won, previous violence over the last 30 years, nobody being brought to justice. So with the program Bunga Data Bunga, which means Speak Sister Speak, we had candidates on, female candidates and some male candidates and other people who are involved in the election process, so that the Kenyan public begins to understand their process, to talk to us about a 2/3 rule that is already on the books, but that the government and the political parties are ignoring because only 1/12 of women are in politics right now. And they did something that is unheard of anywhere. I can't say anywhere else in the world, but definitely where both of us are. Any of the women running for election, they characterized as prostitutes, loose women. They would say things like they have had abortions, but that women candidates somehow lack morals. And so many women didn't want to be slandered and withdrew. They were pressured to withdraw by violence, slashing, beating, robbing, and being raped. Over the past 30 years, every 5 years, violence had happened. And this is the same thing that kept people enslaved here in America and around the world. And I do want to say slavery exists worldwide and has since biblical times. And they try to make it seem as if only Black people or people of African descent were enslaved here in America. So academia.edu said 1,600 citations have been in the last year on works that I've done. And some is on slavery of white people here in the United States and around the world. At the same time, people of African descent were enslaved here. America uses British history, where slavery started in 1600, but the Spaniards were here with free and enslaved people from Africa. People from the Philippines were here in America in the 1500s, prior to the British coming, free and enslaved. And all people have contributed to the building of America during slavery. And just like right now, we coexist with slavery. Slavery is rampant in Atlanta, but I don't see slave auctions. You don't see them in Morocco. She doesn't see them in Kenya. But in Kenya in particular, they're stealing affluent teenagers and young people and enslaving them or holding them for ransom right now. But she doesn't see that. So I wanted to add in this segment that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening, because many people are refusing to believe that these women are being mistreated, beaten, robbed, and raped. And that's why on Queen Mother Speaks, we've given women candidates from rural areas and the city a voice internationally. We built social media sites. I built the YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook pages, which Google Analytics said had a 725% increase in 1 week. And so women who normally don't have a voice were then given a platform to speak. And this is what she's saying we can help you to do with the group in Senegal that's coming. And we did that because we heard one of our guests talk about the violence in Kenya during the election. And then they said the same thing happens in at least 22 other countries. We had to start with young people. We had to give them an international voice. We had to give them access to social media. Is the internet free anywhere in Morocco? You could go to an internet cafe, Elizabeth?
Yes. Well, internet cafes, we have what we call cyber cafes.
Right.
That it's not free in there, but basically any cafe you go to, That's not specifically an internet cafe, right? Has Wi-Fi to some degree.
Okay.
So all of the hotels, most of the bars, most of the restaurants, most of the cafes, it's not the best or most reliable oftentimes, and sometimes it's overextended, especially in times of the week when people are all at home and not at work, like maybe Sundays can be, and certainly during the pandemic, we had a terrible time with getting any kind of reliable internet service because everybody was using it.
Right.
But yeah, the signals are getting better. The towers are being built. Morocco is moving forward slowly in that. I wish they would move forward a lot faster in the neighborhood and where my country house is, because that is pretty abominable signal wise here. But in this town, in the cities now, we have fiber optic cable. So yeah, we're moving forward.
In Kenya, they don't have that. So the women or men or children, they don't have hospitals. They don't have educational facilities. And if
wait, excuse me, correction.
Okay.
We cannot say that we don't have any.
Right. But I'm
because
saying
we
some
do.
of the rural areas that we looked at.
Yeah, some of the rural areas we do not.
Right, counties. And they have men elected. But if a woman was elected, she wants her children to have access to medical care. She wants male and female children to have her children to have access to education. And you want fairness for everybody's child. I don't want your child mistreated. I don't want Dasha's family and friends and children, mistreated. And that's the difference with having participation by everybody in the political process, in all the areas, any area that you can think of. So at Queen Mother Speaks, I believe in strengthening families. I'm not for women and totally against men. I don't do anything that's Black only. I want every culture all over the world to understand that it took everybody for slavery to end or to be diminished in many places. At the bottom of the screen, the Transatlantic Slave Trade Database information is running, and we'll talk about that at another time. But it's just so many pressing issues that don't just, they didn't occur one time in history. That's why it's important that you videotape and document your elders, people in your community, people in your nursing home, get their stories. Because what we found is when you, during the month of June, we talked to elders who were men, and we have the Senko for elders on the show. During Mother's Day month, we had elder women on. And what we found in my family, Elizabeth, is that I can learn from the previous generations. And in my case, 5 have been living at one time. So I don't have to go back to the beginning. I can stand on their shoulders in terms of knowledge, politics, religion, health, and then they propel us up. And we do that not just for our family, but for other people. And so for people that don't have someone like that, or have a Dash, or have a Elizabeth or Talila in their lives, then Queen Mother can propel you. You can stand on the shoulders of these two giants. If you can't read political documents, if you don't understand unfair business practices, many people don't even know what's happening to them. And it's a serious thing. It's serious when you don't know that you're being locked out of having health care, roads, equal housing, banking, access to education, access. I just learned, Elizabeth, that there's insurance policies here that you can put your money in that's not taxed, no penalties for early withdrawal, and pay high dividends. Well, the norm, we never hear about those. We get you're taxed if you take your money out. And by having access to giants and people who are experienced, you can then take that information and propel another generation. And at 65, I finally know that what I do, people ask me, what do you do for a living? I transfer culture, history, and information from one generation to the next without bias, slant, or omission. That's
amazing,
really, isn't it? And this show gives us the opportunity to do that, to have that dialogue among friends. So now, Elizabeth, we'd like to hear some closing words from you too. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a very similar experience to you both along those lines. My when I first came to Africa, I was a mere teenager, a high school student,
Okay.
and that was the beginning of my now 43-year love affair with Africa, but
Mhm.
specifically in Morocco, and so since then I've evolved into this sort of cultural ambassador of sorts. I
Mhm.
just had a group here a week and a half ago that we did a 6-day excursion from Marrakesh all the way to the Sahara Desert to see real actual nomads, how they live in
Mhm.
their tents at the moment in this incredible heat, with a woman who's just cooking this delicious bread on an open fire with a small tent and on the
Mhm.
smoke and everything, and their animals and everything. We had a sociologist amongst us in the group, and that was very interesting for her. Her husband is a criminologist.
Okay.
Um, and they also, we stopped at some Jewish sites along the way to explore the Jewish heritage in Morocco. And so I was able to enlighten them that Morocco is not an Arab country. This whole excursion we did over 6 days showed the Berber, the Amazigh side of Morocco, which is as it was originally before the Arabs came in the 6th and 7th century to basically colonize. They were the first of the colonizers, long before the French.
Okay.
And so it's been for me, this being a cultural ambassador is so rewarding and so challenging. And one of the first things I did actually when I left the practice of law in the US was to bring a group of students over here who were high school students that wanted to train girls, Moroccan girls, to code. And so we did that. We did that for 2 years. They had some excellent programs over here. So, so yeah, it's, and I want to reemphasize the championing. So these young women who came over for 2 years, now their organization has blossomed. They are on 4 continents. They're
Wow.
in 6 different countries now. The pandemic was kind of a silver lining for them because we didn't have any funds really to speak of, not in the
Okay.
first year and a little bit the second year. But then the pandemic hit and everything went virtual, and that allowed them to expand to all these different places, including
Right.
Palestine, including India. And so it's very rewarding. It's challenging but rewarding. Oh,
You know
here comes
what's
the banging again.
oh. What's interesting, believe it or not, I have a degree from DeVry and that I got in the 90s. So I've had my email address since the 1970s. And I was a computer programmer analyst. You remember Y2K? It's hard to believe that it's 22
Yes,
years since. So I was a
yes.
computer programmer analyst at Georgia Pacific at that time, and I had worked in technology at the urging of Queen Mother. I had worked with her for a few years before that, but she encouraged me to go back and get computer training. So I graduated with honors and did a 4-year program in 3 years. What's so significant about that? I was discriminated against at every turn because there weren't not a lot of women in technology. There were not a lot of Black women in technology. And whenever
Yeah.
we interviewed, we were paid less than men. Just there was, people talk about a ceiling. I said, no, it was a brick wall. And they gave us classes on how to be effective in meetings. Women do 27 different movements before the meeting starts. Men do 8. We carry 5 times as much stuff to a meeting than men. So we had to leave everything there and practice doing 7 moves so we would be taken seriously. But what was so interesting, Elizabeth, where I've been on Social Security disability from cancer, congestive heart failure, both hips replaced, I'm coming off of it because medicine in America is a business.
Yeah.
And it keeps you sick, you stay sick, you have sick conversations, and before long, you can't do anything but stay in there. So I fought hard and I'm coming out. So I had to redo my resume after all these years. And Elizabeth, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. It's taken me 5 months to try to whittle it down. But now the computers scan in your resume. It looks throughout the whole company worldwide and says, for this much education, for this certifications, for this much experience, this is how much you have to pay her. Elizabeth, I was shocked. And I have a project management certification from 2009. So they have to pay me a minimum of over $200,000 and a range to 500,000
Just to reflect that. Yeah.
a year.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And what happens is they've been paying people this all along, but it wasn't women.
Yeah. Right.
And it's shocking because they have government contracts and they have to do this. So we have this human resource underground railroad and the technology that you're talking about in Morocco that has let us know that things are different. So we want to say from Queen Mother Speaks, congratulations on Kenya's 5 women governments. Thank all of us for the awesome research, and reparations and genealogy is going on around the world. One of the things I've been meaning to tell Elizabeth is I'm 3% Moroccan.
Oh, cool. Wow.
The jobs I'm going for, Elizabeth, I want to work with the airlines so I get free flights and the money. So I'm excited. I was so excited. And Dash will tell you, I had to put everything else on the back burner to do that. And we have a friend from Cameroon who told her that because their business practices, they were referred to as Black Jews. And my book, Keeper of the Fire, documents 6 of the tribes of Israel that had migrated from East Africa to West, coming through Cameroon, the Congo, to Nigeria and Ghana, 7 tribes in Ghana. And I'm considered to be West African Semitic, which means that my family were Hebrew or Jewish. And I'm a descendant of Noah's son, Shem. And they did that by DNA. And it was really fascinating in 2012. And I used family tree DNA. We were trying to show that my grandfather, who's born in 1856, was related to his father, which puts me in DAR, Palatines, Huguenots, Dames of the Magna Carta, King John, who did the Magna Carta, a king from Scotland, and Charlemagne and everybody else. And so it was a DNA match. So I wanted people to document your history, because whether they made shoes, agriculture, hunters, it's important for us to know the truth about the cultures. So moving forward, we want to see a young generation of the King family plan to visit Kenya and Cameroon. Queen Mother can play a major part, and she is a major giant in helping to mitigate the projects. So she did also have a group that came to visit her and did lots of fun stuff. Oh, that's from Monifa. Hi, Monifa. Thank you for the birthday wishes. But let's get ready, ladies, to say goodbye for today. Prepare to be thrilled and enjoy some more upcoming shows. We're going to have Bernice Bennett is one of the guests. Also, Frederick Douglass's descendant is alive and well. Edward Ball, who has slaves in the family. My family is also related to the Ball, to Edward Ball, who wrote that book, which is really fascinating. We've got the youth authors and conservation efforts of the Gullah Geechee people, just all kinds of exciting stuff.
Yes,
so
yes.
Go to Queen Mother Speaks, get those links for the Freedmen's Bureau, the Transatlantic Slave Database, and also the California Slave Registry, better known as the Slave Database. So ready? Do you want to go left hand first?
We always go left hand first, right hand second,
hand.
and then both hands together, blowing out love into the world. Are we ready?
Yes.
Are we ready? It's been a great show. I'll say to you that before this show started, we didn't know how it was going to be. But one thing we do know is when you have the energy and the love and the passion, it can come forward. So thank you, Elizabeth, for excellent.
My pleasure.
Report again for the Talila Report, Nana. You're doing a great job. We look forward to what's going to happen on the next 2 to 3 shows of Queen Mother Speaks. Get that left hand ready. Here we go. Okay, get that right hand ready. Okay, now we're going to do both. Here we go.
Mwah.
We love you.
We love you. This
Yes.
is Queen Mother Speaks every Wednesday, every week, live at 5 p.m. Kenya time, 10 a.m. New York time. Queen Mother Speaks. We thank you.